Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I was thinking about something recently. Obviously, you know, when you have, as a parent like you, which I'm not saying I'm a parent or anything like that, but obviously, if I ever decide to have kids, obviously that's something I'm kind of going back and forth in my head. But obviously, as a parent, you get to share some of the things that you love with your kids that maybe they'll like it and maybe they won't. Obviously, there's always a chance that because you're super into something and you might push it on your kids might be like, I hate this because you enjoy it. But it might also just be a situation of like, maybe if you let them kind of find it on their own, or maybe introduce it to them, not throwing it all at them at once, but maybe they'll kind of come to appreciate it, and it could be something you share with your kids. I don't know, I just think that's kind of an interesting thing, because I mean, a great example would be like my nephew, kind of into anime. I think decently into anime, which his mom, my sister, super not in anime. It's just not even in her purview. Actually kind of made fun of me because I actually wanted to go to the theater just to see the first Pokemon movie, because I was a kid like, oh, Pokemon is cool and blah, blah, blah. And she was kind of looking at me like, whatever. So it's just, kind of painting that particular picture. But it just kind of got me thinking about, what I want to kind of share. Like, it's always been something like, even like, it doesn't even have to necessarily just be with kids, but even like friends and significant others. Like, I've shared some of my nerdy stuff that like with friends and people, like obviously like when it comes to music, I kind of like are super into and a big fan of. I share that with some of my past girlfriends, just because we have similar musical tastes and stuff like that. So like there's certain bands I like that, and songs and music in general that I introduced to my like significant others in the past. Video games, anime, because I remember like when I was a teenager, I introduced my girlfriend at the time to the anime Air Gear. That's a whole thing. If you've never seen Air Gear or even read the manga, I highly recommend you check it out. It's a series I need to circle back to, because obviously the anime doesn't cover the entire story. It's a whole thing. I won't go on a huge tangent about it, but it's like one of those examples of like, because I've witnessed certain people share certain things that they care about with significant others. Like for me, like something I would probably share both with significant others and maybe, future children, if I have any at any point in time, will be the Kingdom Hearts franchise. Because I've actually seen people do that, like introduce their respective significant others to like the Kingdom Hearts games. And that's kind of interesting. And I would want to do that to like I said, a significant other, children of mine. I could definitely introduce my kids to it at a particular early age too, because those games are E for everyone. Which is actually interesting, because I want to say the original Kingdom Hearts is the only one that's actually just E for everyone. I believe every subsequent game, I know it definitely started with 2. It might have included Chain of Memories, is the E10 and up situation, but still, like, you can introduce your kids to it relatively young enough, because it's also a means of introducing them to the Disney World and Pixar, which, to be fair, Kingdom Hearts would involve homework on many different fronts, because it's like, oh yeah, here's this character, here's this Final Fantasy character, oh, Cloud, yeah, you don't know anything about him, it's kind of a little bit emo, but that's a whole thing of like, oh, here's Hercules, or here's Alice in Wonderland, or here's Ariel, here's Jack Skellington, here's Peter Pan, so on and so forth, hey, Donald and Goofy, like all that type of stuff. So I think that could be interesting, like I said, to sharing that with a significant other, because obviously you want to share the things that you're passionate with people that you care about. But it's like, even like the stuff of like, because I've never been big in sharing a lot of the stuff that I was nerdy into. Like, obviously I'm not the biggest big into communicating with people. I'm just very socially awkward. So I, especially growing up, was very reserved about who I talk. Unless I knew you were into nerdy stuff, I wouldn't talk to them about anything like nerdy related, So like because I always hold a memory of being in elementary school in 4th grade, that basically when everyone's supposed to be outside, me and like 2 of my friends stayed inside to play a Dragon Ball Z fighting game on the computer, and our teacher kind of got on us the next day for like, I heard you guys did that. That's a big no-no. And so that was the whole thing. So kind of showing you where I was at that time and where I currently am today. So it's one of those things of like, I never had a lot of people to share stuff with. So that's also the beauty of this YouTube thing. Like, I like being able to share, like, oh my God, you're into this particular thing? Hell yeah, let's talk about it. I'm ready to talk. I am ready to talk about some Kingdom Hearts. You want to talk about Trails of Cold Steel? That's going to be another property I'm definitely going to introduce my kids to someday, because I'm like, even though like, we have to do a little extra homework, because I'm like, okay, where I am currently, I'm having to go back and kind of go, okay, figure things out. Like, it's really interesting, because I'm currently like, storyline wise, I'm at Trails of Cold, Trails in the Sky, 2nd chapter, roughly nearing the end, but it's filling in a lot of gaps storyline wise, and I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. It adds so much more context to a lot of stuff I was, more familiar with in the Cold Steel game, so that's pretty neat. So we'd have to do some homework on that front as well, but yeah. I'm just so curious, like what other things I would introduce my kids to. Probably like all the MCU. I think I could show that to my kids. Yeah, I mean, also once again, it turns into what your kids are into or not. If I, it's once again a thing of like if I shove enough superhero stuff in their face, maybe they'll grow to love it, or maybe they'll just grow to downright hate it just to spite me. But I'd want to introduce them to the DC movies, the Marvel movies, the Marvel TV shows, both Disney Plus, everything prior to Disney Plus. Granted, the Netflix stuff I'd have to, probably wait on that. Well, not probably, definitely would have to wait on that front. Maybe the Arrowverse stuff in particular would be pretty interesting too. So like, those are just some of the things I'm really into. As I kind of reference it, because I brought up Kingdom Hearts, I brought it up earlier, like having to give them more research on like Final Fantasy. It probably also turned into like, well, when do I introduce them to Final Fantasy games? Because those are teen rated games. Same thing to the Cold Steel games; those are teen rated. So like, that also depends on what kind of parent you are, whether you really monitor like the difference between everyone and teen. Because obviously there's certain things you probably like, I don't want to expose my kid to that too early or something like that. Like I said, I'm focusing on the kid element, but it's just like, once again, these apply to both friends as well as significant others as well. Like, just being able to, these are things I'm passionate about and I'm really into that I'd love to kind of share. Like I said, YouTube also presents me this opportunity to share it and communicate with people who are also into said things of like, hey, you've never seen or heard of this thing, check it out, it's super good. You might not like it, but that's kind of what a lot of this channel is, me just talking about things that I like and recommending, those pretty much what my nerd modes entirely are. It's like, hey, here's this series I'm really into, I recommend you check it out. Maybe it's something right up your alley, maybe it's not. Like, you won't know until you check it out. So I guess I'm going to take a lot of my nerd modes and kind of apply those to like my personal life of like, hey, you like video games, right? Oh, like check out all these Kingdom Hearts games, they're pretty dope. Or check out these Final Fantasy games, they're pretty dope. You're not into JRPGs, you're more into fighting games. Oh, well, we have nothing to talk about. I mean that jokingly, but just like obviously JRPGs, kind of my wheelhouse to a certain extent. I'm not the king of JRPGs in no shape or form, but that's more my lane of style and everything. Regardless, this video kind of had really no purpose, but obviously I'd love to know your thoughts about it. Are there any particular properties, like maybe it's movies or TV shows? Because I know movie-wise, I know for some people it's like, oh, showing their kids to Star Wars movies, the original. Obviously you can feel however you want to about the prequels and the sequels, but also introducing them to like the animated stuff, whether it be Clone Wars or Rebels, that type of situation. So, what are some properties or things that you're really into, that you're really interested in sharing with your kids? Like I said, it doesn't have to be movies and TV shows. It could be books, it could be comics, it could be music, maybe certain bands. It'd be interesting like later on down the road, like getting my kids to listen to some of my favorite bands, like getting my kids to listen to Dance Gavin Dance, which I'm sure there's some songs it's like probably don't want them listening. Maybe when they're a little bit older they can, like, but it's like I think Dance Gavin Dance is probably currently my favorite band, so to be able to share that with someone, which is also going to be weird because it's like they've been around for quite a while, but in comparison of like someone being like, oh yeah, I want to introduce my kids to the Eagles, kind of like something a little older. It's like, oh, I want to introduce my kids to Aretha Franklin or Patti LaBelle, or something maybe like older school in that regard, and I'm picking something more modern-ish like Dance Gavin Dance. It's just, once again, generational thing, I guess. It's just interesting. So I rambled on enough. Like I said, these are just some of my thoughts. I'd love to know what are some of the things you would introduce to, once again, not just kids, but friends and significant others that you really like, that you would just pitch to other people to try and get them into as well, and hope that they're really into as well. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.